It started off relatively simple with something you looked at very recently. Let's have a look at this log equation. You had to convert it to this quadratic, very easy to factorize. You just had to notice this pair of restrictions, and of course we talked about this before, that x is greater than 0 is kind of, inverted commas, more restrictive than x is greater than -6. So therefore you've got to invoke it, x is equal to 3 only. So there's a mark. Okay. Let's have a look at question 2. This is reaching back to your work on binomial. This we ought to be able to expand without anything further than this. Look, you've got 1 out the front, so you know it contributes nothing. All you need to think about is that 1, 3, 3, 1. You've got root 5, you've got root 5 squared, and then you've got root 5 cubed, right? So you can see there are my integers, and there are my rational parts, and there are my irrational parts. So there's your 8 root 5, and again it's 1. Question 3. Let me just say, question 3, as an original question, this is the real question. This is the real question, right? And you can do this without part 1. You don't need part 1 to help you. Part 1's meant to be a big flashing sign clue. Okay, you got a part 1 and part 2, use them. So let's have a look at part 1, it's easy. You just do your straightforward expansion, okay? You take out your factor. Do remember, it says show, right? So you really ought to include a line like this. I really think that line is important. I wouldn't necessarily deduct marks for it, but if you went straight here, like this line demonstrates no understanding because it's there in the question, right? So therefore, to get to that, and you're trying to show you understand, there's really sort of one point here for having recognized the identity, and then the second point, I'm not saying these are marks because you might be given 1 mark for this question, but the second one is for actually doing the factorization, and the factorization shouldn't jump straight away. You're trying to show.
If I use the other part.
You're 11. I know your instinct is to discuss how you went in it. You will get that time. Let's just try and move through. Okay. Can I save your question to the end, Raf? Is that okay? Okay. Now when you get to part 2, because of what you've done in part 1, right, you've established this result, all you need to say is that in this specific case, you've got that tan A tan B part there being equal to -1. That's all you need to do. In this particular case, this is true. So you've got 1 plus -1 over here, which is 0. So this whole part vanishes. Now, I want to make a note on this though, because I've got a pointer over here. Where does this come from? Because it's an important part of this result. And it could have been, this is not, but it could have been a show question, and then you'd actually have to, you can't just pull this out of nowhere. So let me show you where I pulled it from, okay? A and B are both angles, okay? You know that B is acute, but you don't, well, you know A is not reflex, but that's about all you know about it, because you can't say A is obtuse. Why can you not say that? All you know is that A is between B and 180. B could be 1 degree, in which case A could be 2 degrees. So they could both be acute angles, and that could be fine. So where do I pull this restriction from? Have a look at these 2 restrictions you've been given. You're given this, and sorry, that should be a B. You're given this, okay? Now I put these 2 together to get a relationship between A and B. I could use either one as my starting point, but I kind of feel like this one's easier. I want A minus B in here somewhere. I want to know what restrictions apply on A minus B, okay? Because you can see over here on the left-hand side, that's the angle that I'm working with. So I would need to know where that's defined, okay? I feel that the easiest place to get A minus B out of this pair of inequalities is here. What would I do to this line? It's actually a pair of inequalities right there. I would take away B from every part of this inequality, right? So this is worth writing down. I would go B minus B, A minus B, and 180 minus B. You okay with that? So therefore, what have I got here? I've got 0. I've got A minus B, which is the angle that I want, okay? Now over here on the right, I could just leave that as it is, okay? But keeping in mind that all I know about B, like over here, it could be 0.00000000001, right? Which would make this like 179.999999. In other words, practically speaking, it's still less than 180 degrees, right? Like there's no actual part that I can take off of that. So this is still true. Taking away B doesn't actually change this 180 because B could be almost 0. So this can be almost 180, which is exactly what the inequality already says. Okay.
What if it's 90? What if it's 89?
Well, it could be, but I don't know that for certain. So I can't say if it were 89, then I would know that this would be this would be 91, wouldn't it? But I don't know that. I don't know that, so I can't say it. All I really know is this. Now, as it turns out, okay, that would still be okay because if I use this restriction, let's think about what cos looks like. What does it look like between 0 and 180? Answer, it looks like this. It's half of the cycle, isn't it, right? So even if I did bring it down all the way up to 91, okay, there's only one solution to that equation. When is this equal to 0? And the answer is when it's 90 degrees. Okay? So that's where I get that solution from. There is one solution and only one solution to this because of the domain restriction. You need to bring that in, right? So that's a really crafty question. There's not a lot of working to it, as you can see, but there is a lot of logic you need to apply.